Okay, so not many Americans probably know this, but the largest organized crime group is the Yakuza, which comes from Japan. Now, despite being from Japan, their reach in the underground organized crime world it spans everywhere. Now, you might hear the word criminal and organized crime and think that this is going to be a very black and white situation, that they're criminals, so they're bad people. But if you were to ask a Japanese person what they think, you'd get a lot of different answers. Some saying they're not that bad, some saying they're awful and we need to get rid of them. But before we get into those examples and those explanations, I want to lay the groundwork for their history and origin and where they came from. Now, according to Mark Oliver, the Yakuza started as a social class called the Barakumen. Now, the Barakumen were the lowest of the low. They were uneducated, they had no money, most of them couldn't work, and the ones who did were completely cast out from society and had a hard time finding work. Due to this, they had to turn to crime to survive. Now, originally this started as petty crimes like occasional pickpocketing, stealing food from the marketplace, things like that. But then that evolved into robbing homes, which evolved into murder for hire, which eventually became the Yakuza as we know it today, the largest organized criminal organization. Now, again, I said criminal organization, but they have done some good things. According to Japan Today, in 2011, the 2011 tsunami and the Kobe earthquake, where the disaster relief was completely funded by the Yakuza. The Yakuza actually started sending out relief and help to those during the disaster before the Japanese government or the Coast Guard or any other foreign government could get involved. They were the first ones there. And they also, on a smaller scale, they often will dress very nice and have a very pleasant appearance when out in public, and to not cast fear to the Japanese people. They'll wear really nice suits, and these suits will often cover up big characteristics that would identify a Yakuza member, such as their notoriously huge pieces of tattoo artwork on their bodies. But also, according to Japan Today, they're still criminals. They still do a lot of bad things. A lot of the missing persons cases in Japan are believed to be tied to the Yakuza. They still kill people. They take over businesses. They steal things. They are just not... They're criminals. But in a weird way, the disaster relief that they started actually would backfire on the people of Japan because they monopolized the whole thing. If any disaster happened, it then had to go through the Yakuza. If you wanted to donate money for disaster relief, that money was technically going to the Yakuza. And that, put a bad taste in a lot of people, and bad taste in the mouths of a lot of people of Japan, because they don't want to support or be a part of a criminal organization. And yeah, they don't want to be a part of that, so then they don't send in money or help, and then the disaster doesn't get fixed. Now, to start bringing it back around to what the Yakuza are doing today, in a book called The Last Yakuza, it details what they're going through today. And it's really interesting because they were this very, as I've mentioned, this, the largest criminal organization in the world, but they're disappearing. A lot of current members don't want to be a part of it anymore. A lot of past members are speaking out against it. Nobody's really joining it anymore. But to remedy this, they thought that they would start a political campaign. They started the Democratic Liberal Party of Japan. Now, this didn't really go anywhere for them. For a little bit, it was working, and people were behind them, till a lot of people started to look deeper, realize it's the Yakuza, and a lot of the politicians that the Yakuza were working with were also kind of corrupt. And so they've kind of fallen out of the eye of Japan. When people hear about them, it doesn't strike fear into them anymore, or curiosity. It's just, they're just there now. So in my opinion, I find them very fascinating, starting from nothing to getting to this great height as being the largest criminal organization ever, to, we're seeing that decline now. They're starting to go back to, maybe it's not the best idea to be a part of the Yakuza anymore. But in conclusion, it's very interesting. There's a lot of history. I definitely recommend you go look more into this on your own time. But I just want to thank you for listening to my presentation, and goodbye.